In transcripts of hypnoanalysis, it is impossible to show facial expressions, gestures, reactions, and extreme emotional displayed by patients. You might not know, for example, that the patient who was the victim of a congenital illness showed such extreme emotion that in the tape recording made at the time you can hear violent sobbing and the gasping for breath. I can assure you, however, that her reactions were not unusual for a patient going through an abreaction in hypnoanalysis. As we examine the circumstances surrounding the emotional problems of this patient, we begin to wonder why her hay fever didn't show up during her childhood or first marriage. Certainly, there were great problems in her late teens, but the hay fever did not develop until trauma had piled upon trauma, culminating in the great fear engendered when morbid thoughts caused her to cry excessively as she feared for her son's life. We have discovered in hypnoanalysis that this seems often to be the case. A person is free from allergic reactions for any number of years, and then suddenly one or more allergies show up, always preceding by strong emotional circumstances. A year or two after the hypnoanalysis for the hay fever victim just described, her doctor reported to me that she had gone through a couple of hay fever seasons without showing any evidence of allergy. She has recovered completely from her reaction to the pollen, though skin tests have still prove she is sensitive to pollen. In addition, her morbid fears were completely erased. I'm certainly not claiming that the hypnoanalysis itself was responsible for her recovery. It was supplemented by the work of an excellent doctor who had the good sense to continue working with the patient until her difficulties were completely corrected. The credit belongs not only to the hypnoanalysis, but to the intelligent cooperation and further work by a good doctor. Let me give you another illustration of allergic reaction. I was asked to employ hypnoanalysis with a young lady who had been completely free from any signs of allergy until she had reached the age of 11, when a severe case of hay fever had developed. The hypnoanalysis revealed that when she was 8 years old, her mother died, and it was a terrible shock to the young child. Eventually, she seemed to have recovered from the shock and was in excellent health. She showed no allergic reactions. 3 years later, her father remarried and brought the stepmother to live with the child. That fall, she developed hay fever. In the hypnoanalysis, she told how bitterly she resented the first appearance of her stepmother. She still deeply missed her mother and felt that no one could replace her real mother. She would sob herself to sleep at night, but not wanting her father or stepmother to know how she felt. She repressed the tears when she was in their presence. The sobbing continued, and when she was alone at night, she would find herself crying even in her sleep. Then the hay fever season came along, and with it her first attack of illness. At the time I saw the girl, it was in the midst of the hay fever season, and what I call the crying syndrome was apparent. In my opinion, every case of hay fever represents a crying syndrome. The eyes tear and get red as from weeping. The nose runs. The throat gets dry and raspy. Frequently, there is gasping for breath. All these signs appear when a person cries excessively. Hypnoanalysis reveals again and again that victims of hay fever and many other respiratory illnesses have undergone traumatic experiences that cause prolonged crying. Consciously, these people have stemmed back the tears, but at a level below conscious awareness, the tears persist. The crying apparently affects a change in sensitivity to allergens, and the allergic reactions develop in the crying syndrome of hay fever. I believe that just as it is possible for a person to repress unpleasant thoughts, it is possible to repress the emotions which stem from those thoughts. Tears are one of nature's relief mechanisms. If thoughts bring tears and the tears are repressed, that is, the mechanism is not permitted to operate. Many respiratory illnesses can and often do result. If you had seen this crying syndrome in literally hundreds of emotional illnesses, I believe you would agree with me that the crying syndrome is worthy of further medical research and study. Find the cause of the syndrome in every patient and you will be probably able to help many people who suffer from respiratory conditions. There are exceptions, however. A doctor once brought his son to class, an 11-year-old boy who was a victim of asthma and hay fever. He had been taken to Denver, where notable work is being done with asthmatic patients. Unsuccessful there, the father took the boy to a distant state, where a specialist was reputed to be doing remarkable work with asthmatics. Again, all treatment failed. The boy still had his asthmatic condition. Then the father became a student of hypnosis, and one night he suggested that we might uncover the cause of the asthma by means of hypnoanalysis. I agreed to try, but stipulated that neither parent must be present in the room while we were working with the boy. I explained to him we have found it advisable not to have loved ones present when hypnoanalysis is done. Patients who are emotionally involved won't speak freely when family members are present for fear of saying something embarrassing to themselves or disturbing the people they love. The boy very much wanted help, and he responded to hypnosis beautifully. Under hypnoanalysis, he told how when he was a baby, all he had to do was to cry and his mother would come running. With the arrival of a baby sister, attention was divided. Now mother didn't respond to crying as fast as she used to. One day he cried so long and hard that his breathing made a funny sound. This sound didn't disturb him at all, he said, but when his mother heard it, she came running to him frightened. Rails, she called it, and when she told her husband, the doctor, he too became alarmed. Now the child could get attention anytime he wanted, simply by crying and making those funny sounds when he breathed. He could make his father and mother pay more attention to him than they did to his baby sister. The hypnoanalysis did not produce any immediate improvement that I could see. Before the conclusion of the session, the boy volunteered the information that was certain the parents favored his sister. He wanted their love so badly, even asthma seemed a small price to pay for it. When the parents were made aware of the situation, they were shocked. They told me they would do everything in their power to correct the brother and sister problem. I'm sure that gradually, as the sibling rivalry eased, the boy will outgrow his asthma. In many cases, a patient suddenly begins to have strong reactions to all sorts of allergens, though he has never been troubled by them before. Skin tests may show that he is sensitive to everything, from chocolate to red wheat to wool. Judging by these skin tests, I am led to believe that the allergies have always been present and that only the allergic reaction has been affected. The patient who suddenly has an attack of hay fever has probably been allergic to pollen all his life, but the severe reaction was reciprocated by an emotional problem. I believe this to be true of any number of allergies. Since the allergies have always been present and probably always will be, all that can be done in the light of present knowledge is to correct their effect. To my knowledge, no way has been found to cure an allergy when we remove the reaction. We haven't caused the allergen sensitivity to disappear. Some years ago, I had in my class an allergist who was an excellent student. He saw me use hypnoanalysis with a number of patients suffering from allergic reactions. He said to me, Dave, it's very odd the way I became an allergist. I was in medical school, engaged to be married, when along came an allergy that almost killed me. It was graduation day and my girl and I celebrating the fact that we were engaged. A bunch of young grads along with my girl and I went out together for celebration. We decided to have a shore dinner. We were perfectly happy in the group, my girlfriend and myself, and there were other boys and girls, all medical students, all finishing college and enjoying a wonderful shore dinner. There were clams, oysters, lobster, what a shore dinner is composed of. All of a sudden, I got sick. Everybody else was perfectly well, but I got so sick I almost died. When I found out that I was allergic to clams and that it was the clams that had made me so sick, I decided to find out something about allergies. And so I became an allergist. I said to him, Doctor, I would like to find out exactly what happened that night that you had the clams. He declared, it's just like I told you, Dave. Everybody was having a wonderful time. Everybody had clams. Everybody was feeling wonderful, but I got sick. It's because I'm allergic to clams. I told him, not necessarily. You had clams in your life before, and they hadn't made you sick. Let's do hypnoanalysis to find out what caused you to react this way. I regressed him to graduation night. I had him relive the episode little by little. Just before the shore dinner was served, he and his girl had a terrible fight. She gave him back his ring and told him she was not going to marry him. Never. He felt miserable. Then the shore dinner was served and he found he couldn't stomach the clams. That is when the reaction to the allergy occurred. The fact of the matter is that probably this man had always been allergic to clams, but it was not a vile poison for him until the emotional upset came along coincidentally with the eating of the clams. Many years ago, I saw an interesting allergic reaction. I met an actress who had a reoccurring and disappearing strawberry mark on her forehead. It was just as red as a real strawberry and looked exactly like a strawberry. But the mark only appeared on her forehead during the strawberry season. Every time I see a strawberry, she told me, I get this reaction. I don't know why it happens. Her case is reminiscent of a stigmata, more prevalent in Europe than here, brought on by religious ecstasy. Such marks are evidently stimulated by emotional responses. A somewhat similar case was brought to my attention by a dermatologist who brought to class a patient afflicted with severe hives. The hives were not present at the time, and the dermatologist told me that the patient had only been troubled by such skin reactions during the past couple of years. The hives would disappear for a while and then come back. The doctor believed there was an emotional basis underlying the disorder. In hypnoanalysis, this story was relieved. The patient had held a minor position as a factory hand. He was an outstanding worker, and after a number of years of holding the same job, the boss suddenly promoted him to foreman. At first, he was very proud and his friends were very happy for him. Now, however, he had to give orders to co-workers who were old friends, and since the boss expected him to turn out a specific number of units a day, he had to exert pressure on them. He was unhappy about being in a position of authority, which he really didn't want, and every time the boss needed him to pressure his co-workers, the hives developed. To find out whether the reaction was strictly emotional, the dermatologist pretended to be the boss during part of the hypnoanalysis. After listening to the doctor give orders for 2 or 3 minutes, the patient developed enormous hives on his arms, legs, and body. These hives were larger than silver dollars. When we told the patient the boss had left, almost immediately the hives disappeared. We have worked with several victims of hives, and the symptoms always seem to originate on an emotional basis. While hives may or may not be considered an allergy, they do show an emotional reaction similar to allergic reactions. I was visiting at the home of friends one evening, and many guests were present. When a dish of candy was passed around, the man seated next to me looked at the chocolates longingly and said, "Sometimes I get such a fierce longing for chocolate that I eat them no matter what, and then I get so sick that I think I'm collapsing. My nose runs, my eyes water, and my stomach is upset. But I can't resist eating that stuff." Following a theory I had, I asked him to resist the candy, this time just long enough for me to give him a few hypnotic suggestions. He was most agreeable. I put him into a deep state of hypnosis and give him the suggestion that he could eat chocolate without suffering any ill effects, provided he never had them at a time when he was emotionally upset. Then he ate the chocolates without any ill effect. The results were astounding, for he has been able to eat chocolate ever since without having any reaction whatever. He is very careful not to eat them at a time when he is emotionally upset. He is, of course, still allergic to chocolate, but he is avoiding the precipitating factor which caused him to react to the allergy. Some allergists claim that all allergies have an emotional basis. Others insist that some do. Hypnoanalytic research, however, leads me to the conclusion that no allergy itself is emotionally produced, but all reactions to allergies have an emotional basis. There is quite a difference. For clarification, let's get back to the crying syndrome. I can remember a nurse who came to class with an extensive rash on her hands. Her eyes were watering and itchy. The crying syndrome was apparent. It seems that she had never shown a reaction to allergies of any type, but in April of that year, she suddenly developed a rash on her hands and currently the watering and itching eyes. She cried wearing rubber gloves, but they didn't help her at all. The rash continued to get worse. Finally, she went to see a dermatologist who made various tests and discovered that the nurse was allergic to antibiotics. He gave her treatment for contact dermatitis, but even this treatment gave her no relief from the rash or the crying syndrome. The doctor then brought her to class. I questioned her at length, trying to determine if she had ever had any allergic reactions at all prior to the previous April. She had not. Then I asked her how she was getting along with the hospital where she worked and at home. To these questions she answered, "Everything is fine. I have no problems. I am happy at home and I like my work." Then I made the remark, "A pretty girl like you must have a lot of boyfriends." She said, "I did have one." "What happened?" "We had a quarrel and broke up. I haven't seen him since." "When did you have this quarrel?" She said last April and broke into tears. The girl didn't realize that the unhappy ending of her romance had anything to do with the allergic reactions. The emotional problem had acted as the trigger mechanism. I asked the doctor to continue working with the patient privately along these lines, and she soon showed a marked improvement. The recognition and treatment of an emotional problem do not, however, relieve every sufferer from allergies, asthma, etc. Judge for yourself whether or not emotion was shown to be a causative factor in the development of the following asthma case. The patient first began to suffer from asthma when she was 24 years of age. The condition persisted for 7 years, then completely disappeared for a period of another 7 years, only to return violently 6 months before her doctor brought her to class. I asked the patient many preliminary questions about family life, her work, her marriage, etc. And she responded that everything was just fine. We regressed her and learned that all through her formative years, she had experienced no allergic reaction and no asthma. She was married when she was 23 years of age. Now read part of the hypnoanalysis which follows. Elman. You've been married a few months now. Are you working or are you staying at home? I'm working. Do you like your job? Yes, sir. When I snap my fingers, it will be the first day you've ever had asthma, and you'll know just what's happening. What's happening today? I'm coughing. I've got a cold. How are things at home? Fine. How are you getting along with your husband? Just fine. This will be the first day you ever got asthma. Something must have happened that caused a common cold to turn into asthma. When I snap my fingers, you will know what it was that emotionally upset you that day. What was it? I don't know. Now stay completely relaxed. When I lift your hand and drop it, you will exactly know what it was. And if you want to tell me, you can. And if you don't want to tell me, you don't have to. But you'll know what it is. Now, what happened that day? Do you want to tell me? Patient becomes disturbed, begins to weep, apparently experiences typical crying syndrome. This is the first day you've ever had asthma. It's 5 minutes before you have your first attack of asthma. What's happening? I just keep coughing and coughing and coughing. What are you worried about? I don't like the cough. Do you have any ideas on your mind that this might be something serious? No, sir. Where's your husband? Is he home? He's with me. What's he doing about the cough? Anything at all? No, sir. How long have you had this cough? 3 weeks. And still coughing pretty badly. What's been happening these past 3 weeks? I was in the hospital. Where in the hospital? What with? Pneumonia. So you did have pneumonia and you were in the hospital. While you were in the hospital, you were pretty sick, is that right? Yes. Did you get scared when you were in the hospital? No. You knew all the time that you were going to get well? Yes, sir. Patient sobs, appears to be experiencing violent emotional responses. My boss said I had tuberculosis. He kept saying that again and again. Your boss thought you had tuberculosis. Now we are getting to the cause of the fear that was underlying the whole thing, aren't we? Yes, sir. And now we are beginning to see where the asthma came from, aren't we? Because way down underneath, he scared you pretty badly when he said that, didn't he? I don't think so. But now that you look back on it, you can see it clearly. You realize his words had pretty stunning effects on you, didn't they? Yes, sir. I quit my job because of it. Now let's go to your most recent attack and see if this attack, which occurred 6 months ago, has any of the same elements in it. What happened about things 6 months ago? Just like the flu, I had an upper respiratory infection and then the asthma came back. Notice the similarity of the events preceding both as attacks of asthma, and notice how the words of her boss gave her morbid fears. At this point, in the hypnoanalysis, the patient rejected any further work when we attempted to find the reason for the reaction through ideomotor response. She revealed that she had gained a great deal of her insight into her problem as the result of the hypnoanalysis, but she preferred not to go further at this time. Her doctor continued to work with her privately. Although hypnoanalysis is often fabulously interesting, sometimes it can become dull and discouraging. During one class, I had worked with an asthma sufferer, but without any success. After the class was dismissed, the doctor persuaded me to work with this patient again. This time, to my surprise, he accepted hypnosis readily and quickly went into a deep state of somnambulism. This is another indication that many patients will not reveal their problems before a group of doctors. He had previously that evening rejected hypnosis when the class was in session. He was a man in his 40s or 50s and had been an asthmatic victim since early childhood, he said. I began compounding suggestions by talking him back into the first grade in school and followed it by taking him to successive grades, hoping that by increasing his awareness, I might be able to discover the cause of his asthma. He was able to identify every child in the first, second, third, and fourth grade, and each time he mentioned the children with whom he studied in those early years, he would mention a boy named Joe. I like Joe, he said. We are awfully good friends. I took him to a week before he first had the first asthmatic attack, and everything was fine. He was a complete happy boy. 3 days before the attack, everything was still fine. 2 days before the attack, he said, "We are out in the yard playing ball. Joe and I are arguing. Boy, am I mad. I hit him and knocked him down." Did that break up your friendship with Joe? Oh no, we are too good friends for that. We made up a little while and I apologized to him. He said I really didn't hurt him anyway. Then I took him to the day of the first asthmatic attack and asked him to relate what was happening in the classroom. He started mentioning the names of the boys in class and then was silent for a moment. Suddenly he exclaimed, "Where is Joe? Joe isn't here?" Then he began to sob violently. The abreaction was so severe that I decided to terminate it. When I brought him out of the hypnosis, he said, "I was talking about Joe, wasn't I? I haven't thought about him for many years." "Yes," I said, "tell us about Joe." He said, "Joe died when we were in the 5th grade. I thought that when I hit him, I caused it. I can't remember now how many times I cried about it, but I would never let anyone know how I felt. After all, big boys don't go around crying about people who aren't even members of their family." The crying syndrome was clearly indicated and was apparently the cause of the first asthma attack. This case, like many others I have encountered, proves that a guilt complex can exist below the level of conscious awareness. The patient had been carrying that guilt complex ever since childhood. It was the cause of the crying syndrome and the precipitating cause of the asthma.